This is the Washington Times front page for Wednesday, June 3rd, 2026. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo. The U.S. and Iran sent contradictory signals on the status of peace negotiations as Israel's assault in southern Lebanon threatened to derail the process. President Trump said reports that the U.S. and Iran had paused negotiations were false and erroneous, and reiterated that discussions were continuing despite the confusion, Von Caucane and Tom Howell report. Iranian state media said earlier in the day that the exchange of messages between Iran and the U.S. through Pakistani mediators had been suspended for at least several days. The exchanges aimed to reach what has been described as a preliminary memorandum of understanding, which would lay the groundwork for in-depth discussions on Iran's nuclear program and support for regional proxy groups. Amid the discussions, the Israeli military issued fresh evacuation orders in southern Lebanon, signaling that a bombing campaign against Iran proxy Hezbollah would continue. Florida voters will get the chance in November to make the Sunshine State the first in the nation to end property taxes. Susan Ferricchio reports the state legislature has voted to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot that would slash property taxes for many homeowners and eventually eliminate them altogether. The measure needs 60% approval by voters to become a constitutional amendment in the state. The plan was ushered through at the behest of Governor Ron DeSantis, who argued it would help homeowners remain in their homes by ending the steady annual increases in property taxes, which he said have caused hardship for many. President Trump has replaced one-third of his senior White House staff, including 4 cabinet secretaries, since returning to office, a more stable pace compared to his first term. During Trump's first term, Jeff Murdoch reports his turnover rate reached 68% after 2 years. Returning to office, he has largely avoided the internal rivalries, staff volatility, and firings by tweet that defined his early presidency. As a result, his current turnover rate is on par with or lower than those of his recent predecessors. However, the president is losing cabinet secretaries at a record pace. In the past 3 months, he has fired Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Attorney General Pam Bondi. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard resigned, citing her husband's illness, and Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeRemer resigned amid ongoing investigations and allegations of misconduct. White House official Monica Crowley says a planned East Wing ballroom is essential for the United States to host major events. Crowley, the country's chief of protocol, told our Alex Swoyer on the Sit Down podcast that the White House doesn't have adequate space to host more than 150 people for an event. She noted the guest list for the state dinner on April 28th for Britain's King Charles III had to be severely narrowed because of a lack of space. President Trump demolished the East Wing to construct a 90,000 square foot ballroom that can accommodate nearly 1,000 people. He has said the $400 million cost of the ballroom will be covered by private donations. A federal judge last week halted construction on the ballroom, saying Congress must approve the renovation. And finally, goals scored in the World Cup will not end the war in Iran. Undaunted, the Iranian soccer team is planning an unprecedented move this summer, playing in a major athletic competition hosted by a wartime opponent. Liam Griffin talked to several sports historians who said this summer's World Cup would be the first they could think of that featured a nation hosting another's athletes they were at war with during a military conflict. The U.S., along with Canada and Mexico, is hosting the tournament June 11th to July 19th. International sporting competitions have long overlapped with global politics. During the Cold War, the U.S. boycotted the 1980 Moscow Olympics because of the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan in 1979, and the Soviet Union responded by skipping the 1984 Games in Los Angeles. Find all of today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or the Washington Times app, and find us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on social media at Wash Times for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo.